an issue, and it affects the way investors calculate whether or not to come to Nigeria, is the issue and the perception of corruption. Let me just read to you something very quickly. Recent report from Reuters. Saudi Arabia has had $800 billion lost due to corruption. Not only corruption, but administrative corruption. This is according to the chairman, Majid Jaroub, who is chairman of the Lawyers Committee at the Riyadh Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which was commissioned by the Saudi government to investigate this issue. Now, this is good public relations. The Saudis have recognized corruption is an issue. They're addressing it. $800 billion, say $1 trillion. All of Nigeria's corruption since the time of Nigeria's independence is a pittance compared to $1 trillion. Yet, when you ask risk managers and banks and credit agencies at the international level, what's the most corrupt major power in the world or major country in the world? Nigeria. One of the leading Wall Street lending houses, which I will mention to you by name off record afterwards if you want to know, has blacklisted Nigeria in terms of providing financing to American oil and gas companies who want to JV here in Nigeria. It's the only place in the world that's blacklisted. In part, maybe only because of this perception of corruption. The Saudis have always understood public relations and marketing and advancing their interest in spite of $1 trillion of corruption. And where is Nigeria in terms of advancing its interests through good marketing and public relations, not only in Washington, but other parts of the world? And yet there are people here who have the capability to do that sort of thing. You're not getting your message out, you're not marketing. And marketing is an essential component of business. And it's an essential component of the way governments, driven by business, will formulate policy.
Let me just address quickly some of the questions. Audience, please. I think we really have cause to worry about a tendency to dissipate our energy. Somebody asked this question, that so often we have the same issues being discussed at so many fora, and then we don't seem to have enough coordination. Well, we can't say we are too large a country. I mean, we have Brazil and India and US and others who are much larger than we are. But it's not easy to answer that kind of question. But somehow, between the issue of leadership, the issue of communications, and the issue of training, because even if you have decisions at so many fora and the right people are discussing the right issues, somehow we should be able to synthesize this quickly and get to the stage of policy and implementation. But I think the point is very well made that we seem to have too many conferences on the same issue and get the sense of going round and round without much progress. And even more important, the issue of policymakers tending to get away or not be available where the fundamentals of these issues are being discussed by trained experts. Well, you know, for some of us in government, I always thought that it would be so futile not to be part of a conference where issues of financing or funding and all these things are not being discussed. So I used to always attend, but I do realize that some of us are just the exception. Invariably, people are too busy, and that whole sense of governance, you know, the discussion is for the people across the other side of the table. But I think something also needs to be done about getting government involved. And the suggestion about carrying this to the presidency and to the legislature, I think that is a very welcome suggestion. However, this can be implemented on a practical basis, where not only do we publish the summary recommendations, but we also get it to lawmakers, you know. For instance, on the debt thing, sorry to go back to that, I remember sitting with the Deputy Speaker of the House of Reps, and I complained to him about my feelings about this. In fact, I wrote a paper. I was in the States when the issues were being done, but I wrote a paper which was on the internet for quite a while. And he said, oh, they are going to call me to come and talk to their subcommittee. Well, I never heard from them again. And anytime I see him, I'm going to raise that issue. So I think, you know, a lot of policymakers are not really, they give a sense of not having the time. And they really should stay around and take part in the debate so that they will be in a position to reflect whatever is decided on the policy-making process. Now, on the question of talk about perception and about foreigners coming in, I don't think I meant it quite the way you put it. All I'm saying is that for those of us who have worked with some of these star performers, the Asian Tigers, you see, well, some of them were much smaller economies, believe it or not. But they also had a long history of education, research, education. So they had a lot of expertise. But what I'm saying is that this is a kind of nationalism, but in the end, it doesn't really give us that power that we crave, where you say, no, you can handle it, you don't want anybody involved. What I was really referring more to is the pure nitty-gritty benefit-cost analysis of projects. You identify your resources. You should be able to dictate how you want to develop those resources. And if in the process you require external expertise, external funding, you should not say you don't want to borrow. Okay, we made some mistakes. I wasn't there then when we had this jumbo loan in the early 80s. And that seems to have given people the impression that no, when people borrow, they put the money in their pocket. And we had this big debate. You know, I mean, the financial institutions have been set up to assist countries, and they have their delineated areas where the IMF comes in, or where the World Bank or whoever. And to my surprise, at the very highest level, there's still a lot of misunderstanding. For instance, I saw a press release by some organization. I won't mention this organization. And they say, don't listen to the IMF and the World Bank. You should pay attention to our coal and our crops and so on. Totally non sequitur, you know. And this pervaded the discussion. People think that it's the IMF and the World Bank that are dictating to government. But there has to be a better understanding of the meeting points. If you have 80, you should be able to fund the balance 20, so that your people can get the job, so that the resources can be exploited. You cannot wait for an investor who may not be interested in that sector and say you don't want to borrow. When you see that the benefits arising from appropriate funding will give you the benefits plus. So that is really the point where I'm talking about foreigners get involved. Certainly not the essence of foreigners should be the ones to come and do it. We have to do it first. I think the major lesson, the major regret from the presentation, very powerful presentation we had about where Nigeria stands, as I was just telling the chairman, is that by this point in time, we should have been so prepared that we'll be in a position to dictate the terms of engagement with the US and with China and with the rest of the world. Nigeria has had at least 25 years, to my reckoning, to be in the position to say, this is our program now, let's see where you fit in. But the implication of what he has given us is that we are so, quote and unquote, helpless in this interaction now, because we've not done our homework, because we've not set up the right government structure, we've not allowed the people's energies to come through the issue of security and justice and economic management and so on. So the ball is still in our court. We have to decide what we want to do. But when other people's interests now begin to be so critical, then they want to come and tell you how you should organize so that their own interests will not be jeopardized. This is really where the urgency, I think, and that's why what his paper is very, very important. And